Now, people who've read my books and watched these videos will be well aware that you're not looking at a Trump supporter, nor are you looking at a supporter of the other face, the other mask on the one-party state, the Democrats. But if we're going to be mature and adult, we have to see the mind game that's being played here.
But we're now having, even in the mainstream media, you've just used the phrase, deep state. So what is this deep state? What controls this deep state? What creates a situation that no matter who is in power, whether it's this party or that party, this leader or that leader, the same agenda keeps unfolding.
Now, at first I thought it was end of the world. Now I see end of the world as end of their world. Anybody with a decent telescope could take a look at both the surface of the moon and the surface of Mars and see some things that look very terrestrial and things that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. One of the caveats that I do have some personal information that I did get personally involved in was some information that had to do with stargates and looking glass, and more specifically the 2012 problem with those projects. The, well, I guess, popular opinion of what's out there right now is that the project was shut down because there was a problem when we approached 2012. I've heard it described a number of ways, but to my knowledge, the problem is timelines converge on that point in time. And when you know enough about the Stargate projects and the Looking Glass project to know that how string theory works and how the possibility of possibilities works and how making one choice over here doesn't necessarily mean that the other choice couldn't exist at the same time. But once you get your brain wrapped around this subject, you find out that at the end of 2012, in an easy way to put it, the choices that we make become less and less consequential to the future. And eventually we're pushed into this bottleneck of time, no matter which choice we make. That's important to the people that had access to Looking Glass because they would use Looking Glass knowing the choices that they would make and the future would pop up. The big mistake was coming up with the possibility of future.
Well, some years ago, 2016, when Donald Trump was elected, the general opinion was that it was a shock, that he'd somehow bucked the system. My own view at the time, which I wrote about and spoke about, was that Trump becoming president was planned all along by the cabal that operate from the shadows and manipulate through both American political parties, making America what it is and what Britain is and what almost every other country is, a one-party state with different masks to obscure that fact. The question then was, well, why would they want Trump in the presidency? Well, there was a number of reasons which I've written about and talked about. In the light of current events, there's one particular reason. They wanted Trump to be a figure around which they could divide and thus rule the United States by breaking up American society into basically two camps. Those that hate Trump and those that love Trump. to develop that division and make it more and more extreme until it moved from verbal civil war, which is what we've been having, and censorship civil war, censoring one side and letting the other say what it likes, to move into what has been planned all along, which is a form of physical civil war, and we're starting to see that unfold.
How do we stand? Where are we?
Well, as I've been writing in my books for nearly 30 years now, we're heading into a global state that more and more mirrors what George Orwell was writing about in 1984 and what Aldous Huxley was writing about in Brave New World. And it's becoming more and more obvious as our freedoms are taken away, as our ability to have freedom of expression is taken away, as we've seen with this latest WikiLeaks batch of leaked files. People are being watched through their televisions, through their smart TVs, and recorded through their smart TVs in their own living rooms. We're having knowledge now that the CIA has been working to hack into car computer systems to create what they call almost indetectable assassinations. And what's starting to happen is the veil is lifting on the scale of control, gathering control that we're being subjected to. Here's a question about the smart TVs. Why on earth are Samsung, for instance, putting microphones and cameras into televisions? Why are we moving now into a direction of driverless cars, which make no mistake, will be compulsory eventually? That's the idea. Which can be controlled through their computer system even more effectively than the computer systems in cars now. Why do we need driverless cars? Why do we have cameras and microphones in televisions? The answer is they're there, and there's back doors into smartphones and back doors into this other smart technology, which again has come to light, which are left there so that this surveillance can take place. And what I've found on this world speaking tour since last summer, 2016, going to Australia and America and all around Europe, is more and more people, more than I've ever seen before, are starting to lift their eyes up from the game show and the sport and say, hold on a minute, what's going on?